Welcome everybody to my channel. My name is Rainer. This is Rainierbooks. I'm a German booktuber living in Stockholm, Sweden. And this is a little bit late, my weekly wrap-up of the week that lies already 2 days behind us. Last Sunday, it's Tuesday. Actually, it's Tag Tuesday. But here's the wrap-up with the things that I've read, things will start reading over the course of the next week, and the things that came into my mind for some reasons. So let's get started. I'm quite lucky to be able to tell you, and that's also the reason why I'm a little bit late with this video, is that I hadn't finished any of the books I was reading on Sunday. That's why I didn't do the wrap-up, because I knew I was so close. Because yesterday, on Monday, I finished not one, not two, but 3 books. And this is the most successful reading week that I had in the year of 2021. Congratulations to me! Yes, and the books that I've read, I'm going to talk about them a little shortly here. I'm going to make a single review about one of them. But this is, first I finished Londoners by Craig Taylor. This is a book that was published already 10 years ago. It's old, if you want. The days and nights of London now is told by those who love it, hate it, live it, left it, and long for it. As you know, I am fascinated. I'm completely fascinated. I'm addicted to the city of London. Usually I go there once a year at least, and when I'm lucky, I have some business trips to London as well, so that I can go twice a year to London, which was so luxury before this pretty little virus hit the world. And then suddenly, no visits to London anymore, not even visits to Gothenburg or Malmo. So that was really a pity. So I read this book about London. It's not the first book that I read about London. I also read Ben Judas' This is London, and won't be the last book that I'm reading about London. It's 10 years old. Canadian journalist Craig Taylor, who I think has at least lived in London. I don't know if he's still there. He has published a new book called New Yorkers, almost with the same cover here, earlier this year, and that's why I found this one about the city of London, an extraordinary portrait. It says, I thought some parts of it were really good, but it was a little bit long. And whereas Ben Judah is writing a book about the immigration of London, about certain parts of London, also the postcode parts of London, like Elephant and Castle, like White City and other places. Craig Taylor has made hundreds of interviews with people who have been to London, who live in London, who have been influenced by London, who love London or who hate London. I thought it was okay, but it wasn't sort of the best book about the city that I have read. And I wanted to read you a little paragraph. The book has so many different voices about London, but it starts and it finishes with the same voice by Kevin Pover, who is a pilot. And in the beginning, you see him approaching London with his airplane, and he describes what he sees from the cockpit. And in the end of the book, he speaks about leaving London. And here it comes. The best part about viewing London is when you do what they call a Lambourne departure, when you leave from Heathrow. You take off on the Westerlies, you hang a right immediately, turn back 180 degrees, fly downwind, and then you make a climbing left turn. And as you climb in the left turn, you climb above London. That's when you get this awesome view of the whole of London, and you can see the view of the Thames coming in, just like the opening on EastEnders. Then it horseshoes around the London Eye, and you look further on towards Canary Wharf, and you see everything. It's incredible. Sometimes they keep you slightly low over there as well. If they've not got any London City or Biggin Hill Airport traffic, then you've got a fabulous view. You really have. Every single time you're just staring at it. Obviously, you're flying the aeroplane as well, but you can't help but have a quick glance, because it's just one of those places where there's so many things going on. There's so many different things to look at. You can see why London's been developed in such a way, really, because obviously back in the day, it was all centered around the River Thames coming in, and that's the main reason why it's all built up in that area. And as it spreads outwards, you can see the concrete fading away into the greenery. You can see Wembley for miles. When you do a departure along the northerly from Gatwick, you get a real sense of humanity. As you climb out over the city, you can see masses of people down there, all the buildings and all the built-up area lit up. And at night time, you've got the M25, which circles London, and you can see all these little beady lights that are dotted around in a very windy circle. And you realize that it's 6 o'clock, and all those little beady lights are actual cars, and they're all queuing around the M25. Day by day, they're down there, and you just think of the effort, all the effort just to get by. It's a tough city. All those little dots, those beads of light, like a rosary, all those people wanting to get in, wanting to get out. The best thing in the world, I find, is where it's a grim day downstairs and there's a layer of cloud, let's say at 5,000 feet or something like that, so it's dark and gloomy. You take off, you can see a little bit below, might be a bit of rain, a bit of drizzle, not a particularly great day in London. The climb out of London is tricky, but then you fly through this cloud, which takes almost 5 seconds to get through, and all of a sudden upstairs is blue skies, brilliant sunshine. You're still listening to the London frequency, but there's this sunshine. You can see the dots of other airplanes. You do feel as though you're leaving behind the beehive. You change to another frequency and you know it's going to get quieter. But then, of course, it would. You're leaving the energy behind. Craig Taylor's Londoners, worthwhile taking it from the archives. This book smells a little bit like archive because it's not on the shelves open to the public in the Stockholm Library. If you want to read it in Stockholm, you have to order it from the archives, from the cellar, from the basement, and that's how it smells after a couple of years already. Yes, it was a good book. Second book that I finished, 2 weeks, 2 Robinsons. Peter Robinson's Not Dark Yet, the newest, the 27th novel around now Detective Superintendent Alan Banks in the fictitious town of Eastvale in Yorkshire in England. And this is almost, it's a sequel to the novel that I read before. It's a sequel to Many Rivers to Cross, and I had to read it quickly because the library gave me 2 weeks. 2 weeks to read this because there's a long queue. Everybody wants to read Peter Robinson nowadays. And as always, it's a very great written plot around Alan Banks. He has to find his assistant or detective chief inspector Annie Cabot and her assistant Gary Masterson. They have to find the killer of Connor Bladen, who was lying dead in his swimming pool by the end of Many Rivers to Cross, at the end of Many Rivers to Cross. And they're also looking for a rapist. Alan Banks is looking for Zelda, the woman that is connected to Annie Cabot's father Raymond, and she has been sex trafficked from Moldova, where she was born and where she lived as an orphan around Europe, southeastern Europe, and then came to Paris and then to England. And Alan Banks is looking out for her because she has been kidnapped. Very good read, a very good thriller. As always, there's a long list of music if you put it together that Alan Banks or Raymond Cabot or other people are listening to, and I made a playlist. To this novel on Spotify, and I will post it down below. So if you want to listen to Alan Banks, who has a wide variety of musical taste, from Gustav Mahler's Symphony No. 5 to The Grateful Dead, Bob Dylan, and other stuff. It's linked down below and you can hear it on Spotify. Not Dark Yet. Now it's a little break until Peter Robinson is coming with novel number 28. It's not dark yet. Alan Banks is still operating. The third novel that I read was the second novel by the English writer Lawrence Osborne, and this is called The Glass Kingdom. The Glass Kingdom, and this is about, it seems to be about a young American woman called Sarah Mullins. She has come to Bangkok with a suitcase with $200,000 in cash. How did she get that money, you may ask? She didn't want it in the lottery, that I can tell you. And she lives in the Glass Kingdom. The Glass Kingdom is a building. It's an apartment house complex. It consists of 4 towers, 4 glass towers, that are connected. And these glass towers, and in the basement on the first, like the first floor, the second floor, the third floor, they have common areas for those people living in that apartment complex. And this apartment complex has its own life. And it's truly fascinating. The people that are living there, they are not what they seem to be. And it seems like this complex has a life of its own. So I still don't know if this is a portrait of young expats mostly living in Bangkok, or this is about, I think this is more about the Glass Kingdom, about this complex that has a life of its own, about Bangkok. Things are happening between the main characters, the four main characters, four women who are playing poker once a week. This is Sarah, the American. There's a Thai American, probably Thai American. Nobody knows exactly. Eurasian girl, young woman. There is a woman from Chile who is a chef in a restaurant, and there's a married British woman who's a manager at a Marriott hotel. There are other hotel chains as well, but she's working at the Marriott Hotel in Bangkok. So these four women get together. They have their secrets. They have their plans. There are housemates and people who are janitors, and everyone has their own agenda, and you can't trust anyone, it seems. And there's no character that is really identifiable with for me in this book, but it was so fascinating to read this book about this apartment complex, and I really would love to live there for a couple of weeks to have this experience that they have there. Not trusting anyone, it sounds crazy, but it's really fascinating. And one thing that is also important, I think, is that Lawrence Osborne, he has been very often compared to Graham Greene, and Lawrence is also living, he's 61 now, 61 years old, he's living in Bangkok, and he's living not in the Glass Kingdom because it doesn't exist, but he's living very close to that area. And he has said also that all the characters that are in this book are characters that he has met in Bangkok over the years. This was a great read. 4 stars I would give it. The Glass Kingdom by Lawrence Osborne. I have also read his Philip Marlowe novel. He wrote a novel about the Raymond Chandler character Philip Marlowe, and that was Only to Sleep. That was his last book. And I want to read more of Lawrence Osborne. Hilary Mantel, not last but not least, Hilary Mantel gave a blurb to this novel, and she said, Bangkok is the star of this accomplished novel. Its denizens are aliens to themselves. So I definitely do recommend Lawrence Osborne after having read 2 of his books now, Only to Sleep, and this second one, The Glass Kingdom, which I really, really liked. It's a novel about this kingdom, as I said, and what I haven't mentioned, what I want to mention in the end of this, speaking about this book, is that the more and more the humans are sort of failing, and their stories, their lives are taking different turns. Animals and insects are taking over the Glass Kingdom. There are power cuts, and you see moths, you see mosquitoes, and stray dogs, and lizards, and all those beautiful animals that you can imagine slowly coming towards the kingdom. I like that book. I liked it. Let's speak about the books that I plan to read, that I plan to start, because I'm blank, blank. I'm free. I can read whatever I want to, but I have my TBR that I talked about a couple of weeks ago. But I made some decisions, some very important decisions. I have Viet Thanh Nguyen's, this is so yellow, Viet Thanh Nguyen's The Committed here, and I really want to read it, but I think I leave it back to the library. I give it back to the library today because I thought about it, and I should probably read The Sympathizer first, it's not a sequel. It's not a sequel, although it's a sequel, There are 2 independent novels, but the same protagonist is The Committed, is also in The Sympathizer, which is the first novel. So I decided to bring that back to the library here in Stockholm so that someone else can be glad and can be happy who has read The Sympathizer maybe. So the books I'm starting now, today, Tuesday, actually Tag Tuesday, is Johanna Bäckström Lanneby's book Familjen. Talked about it in my TBR about 2 weeks ago. This is in Swedish. It's about the city of Gothenburg. It's about a family that is in the book called the Al-Asim family, which is a real family existing in Gothenburg. A large clan of people more or less having roots in Lebanon and who sort of rule the underworld in large parts of Gothenburg. Familjen, the family, is that. The second book that I'm going to start today is from the library. I have two from the library now, which I have to read. Of course, Little Brown has published Anthony Quinn's book London Burning in 2021. It's a very fresh book. This is another thriller that I'm going to read. It's about Vicky Tress. She's a young policewoman and she becomes involved in a corruption imbroglio with the CID. And this takes part in a very interesting time. A lot of British literature is dealing with this time. It's the end of the 1970s and the beginning of the 1980s, the Thatcher era in the UK, which has changed so much in this country. London Burning by Anthony Quinn, not the actor, but the writer, of course. And the third one is, it's always nice from time to time to get some short stories, to read some short stories. They are from Japan, those short stories, and it's the newest book by Japanese writer Haruki Murakami that I'm going to read, and it's called First Person Singular, and I understand that all the stories are written in the first person singular in this novel, this collection by Murakami. 8 stories, and on the front page you have this beautiful cover. You have these snow monkeys that I saw actually 2 years ago when I was in Japan. I saw the snow monkeys on a hill outside the city of Kyoto, and they have like many places in Japan, I think, where they have those beautiful monkeys. Here you can see them once again. Some novelists hold a mirror up to the world, and some, like Haruki Murakami, use the mirror as a portal to a universe hidden beyond it. And I'm excited to read this very soon. These are the 3 books that I'm going to read. And there are other books waiting for me in the shades of the library. I have to make a little excursion to the library. There's another book waiting there, which will jump up on my TBR. But I'm very satisfied with really being able to finish 3 books last week. And I hope that I can do these 3 books in the next 1.5 weeks. What else am I going to do? I have to do the D-tag apparently, and I wanted to include it in this weekly wrap-up, but it gets too long, I think. So the thing that I want to include in this weekly wrap-up is we had June 19th on Saturday last week, and the United States are having a new holiday, which is celebrating the day in, I think, 1865, June 19th, when the last slaves were set free in Texas and put into freedom. And I listened to a podcast. I'm glad that this day is existing now, because I think that's a day of celebration. Even if things didn't get so much better after this, because there were some kind of, we came Jim Crow and all those things came, and still in 2021 we are in a very difficult situation for Afro-American people in the US. But of course the abolition of slavery is very important. But I listened to a podcast last Saturday, Reveal, which is really the best, I think the best journalism podcast in the United States right now, because they always come with great and important issues. And they had a show on Saturday called Monumental Lies, which is about the monuments that commemorate the Confederation in mostly the southern states of the United States. There are hundreds of them left, as you know. And reporters from Reveal went out to a lot of monuments, but also to former yards or farms where people had slaves. And one thing came to my mind, which was quite typical for that reportage, for that report, where they visited a place called Beaufort. I think it was in Virginia. I should look it up. And there was a female guide guiding people through that estate, through where the owners lived and where the slaves lived and she's sort of they don't speak much about slavery when they do these tours. They said in reveal, they show here's the beautiful house and here's where the people lived and they had beautiful homes and they were very rich and very important people in the communities in the South. And they don't speak much about slavery. That's what I realized when I listened to Reveal. But also, when they speak about, there was this woman who said about the Beaufort place, she said, slavery had its good sides and its bad sides, and there were actually some slave owners that treated their slaves like they were family. And I was shocked, I have to say, that 2021, and these places, these monumental places, still get a lot of tax money in order to show them up to the public. And they still say that slavery has good sides, but it's bad sides. And that is really shocking. And even more things were said. There was a woman singing a song on one of those guided tours, and she sings about darkies. She sings a song of the 19th century, and another song that is sort of financed by American taxpayers' money in the year of 2021. So I think that when Joe Biden, on the one hand, introduces this beautiful June 19th, he also should do something to sort of get racism out of everyday life. It's impossible to think, and I don't want to say that we are better or someone is better, but it's impossible to think that in Germany you would go to one of the sites where we commemorate National Socialism and the dictatorship of Adolf Hitler, and an official guide funded by German taxpayers' money would say, there were good sides and es gab gute und schlechte Sachen. That's impossible. That would be an outcry in media everywhere. And not only in Germany, but all around the world, and rightly so. So that was something Listen to Reveal to their show Monumental Lies that really shook me up. I do the DTAG in a special video. I will do another video where I'm going to unhaul 3 books, and I also have to do a book haul in the future, so there's things to do, and there are books to read. Murakami, Anthony Quinn, and Johanna Bäckström Lernaby. I hope to see you very soon on this channel, on your channel, in the commentaries down below. Let's have a beautiful summer. Mask up, be careful. The Delta variant is around and it lingers. It's looking for you. So mask up and be careful. Thank you very much for watching this, and bye-bye.